Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today I have a really cool review for you from the brand Seiko. A little about them. They were founded back in 1881. They are Japanese in origin, but now have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end, and this is one of their high end models. In terms of the type of watch, yes, quintessential dive watch. Some key characteristics in design. When you're looking for a diver, you want water resistance with some type of screw down crown, something that's tough, legible with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if it is on bracelets. This is the Prospex SLA039, which is the international nomenclature, or if you're from Japan, the JDM nomenclature would be SBEX011, and it is essentially a 55th anniversary 1,100 piece limited edition kind of recreation of the 1968 6159 diver. It's a premium recreation of Seiko's first professional 300-meter diver, and it's also its first high beat diver. These go for 6,800 MSRP, or you can find them for a wide range of prices, whether it be from authorized dealers offering discounts or used models. I've seen these go for as low as $3,000, with, of course, different caveats in terms of the wear. Now, I do have a little Marine Master Reduced, a very similar colorway that I have right there in the upper corner, just peeking in, just because, how can you not compare these two when you have them? I'm going to try to avoid it becoming a straight up comparison video. But if that's something you're interested in, definitely leave a comment down below and I'll get that going for you. Because these are two very different watches in terms of the price point, right? $1,200 versus, again, 6,800 MSRP. One has a high beat movement, one has a low beat movement, right? 5 hertz versus 3 hertz. But they're by the same company. Also, you're getting ever brilliant steel on this model, so there's quite a few extra niceties that are there. But with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys. So first of all, I do have this on an Artem loopless sailcloth strap. I mean, honestly, before the watch even came, I wanted to make sure that it had the right strap. The strap that it came on, that's OEM, is a really nice kind of Seiko waffle style recreation. It's a bit long, even with my larger wrist, because it's really meant for diving, right? And being able to fit over a wetsuit and whatnot, being very versatile. Well, for daily wear, definitely was looking for something more comfortable. But with that said, let's take a look at these two. And again, I don't even have my SPB Marine Master Reduced specs, right next to me or anything. So won't do too much from that, but I will say when you look at these in terms of the aesthetic, it's very, very close. Of course, the blue dial there, that black bezel, very, very cool. And of course, that signature case shape, but you are going to see quite a few differences because this is a monocoque case versus the more traditional case there with a mid case back style. So this is going to be front loaded. Versus here, going to be a lot more traditional. Here you're seeing, a couple of extra folds and creases and lines that make this really gorgeous. But you can see, again, similar profile, different execution on that bezel grip there. But it is very, very nice. Either way, these are two gorgeous pieces, and it's actually really cool to kind of have, the affordable next to the expensive model here, and again, a more desirable, and ultimately just a higher tier. But hey, not everybody wants to spend more, and not everybody can. So it's definitely nice to have some options, and very cool for Seiko for having these. So with that said, again, if you are looking forward to a Marine Master Reduced comparison, let me know in the comments below. But until then, let's go ahead and focus on this beautiful SLA. So it's 44.5 millimeters in diameter, 15.3 millimeters thick, and that is quite thick, guys. But you got to remember, Also the fact that it is a monocoque case, so it is a one piece there. So you know, normally where you might have some extra contours, here it's going to be traditionally flat, which definitely pays respect, of course, to the original 6159 diver. I recently featured an original 6159 on my channel, a vintage one. So if you're interested in that, that piece came from Belmont Watches. I think they still have it at the time of recording this. If you guys are interested to see kind of the proportions of the original, that, you know, these watches essentially inspired the, you know, what we would know today as the modern Marine Master 300 Professional. And then we get to the lug to lug 50.7, so it's not short by any means. It does have, of course, this great ever brilliant steel construction, and it is brushed and polished. You're just going to see some nice brushing here, and then everything else is pretty much going to be polished. And ever brilliant steel, in case you're wondering, it's a very corrosion resistant steel. It's actually harder than standard 316 as well. And a lot of people kind of just say it's, well, it's Seiko's version of 904, right? Because it's brighter, it has more luster to it, it's a bit more luxurious, but it's also stronger, you know, as well as being more corrosion resistant. Me, with my EDC background in terms of knives and understanding blade steels, you know, it's not just as simple as one steel versus another. There are so many different things that go into the recipe of each steel, the formula for each steel, that can make it better for certain things than others, but rarely is there a steel that is just better than another, right? It's not like there's just grades of it. Yes, each one is different for different things, whether it's you're using it for a tool, whether you're using it for a sharp edge or a blade, or you're using it to create something, you know, a block of steel, and how much you're going to want to have that. So I will say that this steel is known, at least the standard version of it, not Seiko's proprietary version, but the standard version of this steel is known for being used within components for deep sea, you know, structures. So very, very cool. And a nice thing is that it also happens to have a brighter luster than your standard 316. Now, getting into more of these details here, you look at this dual curve sapphire, really beautiful. And you can see ultimately legible even at very harsh angles because it does have the dual curve. So a lot of dimension, a lot of depth, especially with the way that this bezel extends up, and then you do have the crystal seated below. It just creates a beautiful effect in terms of just having a little bit more eye candy for you to enjoy. Now, this bezel is 120 click, unidirectional, rotating, loomed and shielded 12 o'clock pip. Very, very smooth, ultra smooth. It's actually a little bit less clicky than my SLA017, my 62 MAS recreation. And I love that watch. This definitely has a bit of a different feel, but still very nice, very refined. Quite worthy. Okay, and then the bezel insert is just a lacquered glossy steel insert, and it looks great, looks fantastic. The crown is screw down and unsigned like the original was, so it does pay homage to the original from that respect. And then, although you can't see it, you know, you would have to access it from the front. The movement in here is an automatic Seiko 8L55. It has a 5 hertz beat rate, so that's 10 ticks per second. So that's faster than your standard that you would find on a Rolex, right? Which is going to be 8 ticks per second, or an Omega at 7 ticks per second, or a regular Seiko at 6 ticks per second. So very, very smooth. Not spring drive smooth, because spring drive doesn't tick. It just sweeps, and then it has a magnetic brake that regulates the speed. This is traditional old school watchmaking with those high vibrations. And the nice thing is it actually still has a pretty decent power reserve of 55 hours of power reserve. And typically these are going to be running in between -10 to plus 15 seconds per day accuracy. Again, those are the widest tolerances in terms of what's acceptable. And then what you're going to get, just like when you get a 6R movement, typically it's going to be running better than, you know, -20 to +30. It's going to be running I mean, I've had very good luck. So these 8L movements, no different. This one's running really well for me. Maybe a little fast, maybe about +3 or 4 seconds a day, but still very, very impressive, especially considering that it's unregulated and unadjusted. So this out of the box, very nice movement. Now, of course, we did mention that solid monoblock case there, which is very nice. It just has a couple of fingerprints on it just because, yeah, this is covered with a lot of shiny surfaces. So I'll give those a quick wipe for you guys. And yeah, this is just so gorgeous in terms, look at how much that reflects just perfectly off of the skin there. It's pretty wild. And yes, at this profile, it does appear very thick. It is not a thin watch, but it does employ a lot of those tricks. And you guys will see that when we get this piece on the wrist. But getting into some more of the details, you do have these gorgeous indices, which I'm going to assume are applied. They could be just raised indices that are punched through the back, and they're executed so well that I honestly can't tell the difference. They do have some really, oh, is that a piece of lint there? Let me just, okay. So it does have some really cool micro little lines and texturing that's done to make these really capture the light in a very special way. So if I can get it to capture that, I don't know, I will try, but look at the framing around these. And these are done the old school way, guys, where there is a bit of a recess in the insides of those indexes, and then they are filled with lume, versus the new school way, which is kind of more painting the lume on top. And they apply it in a thick layer. Some people kind of refer to as a glob, but you can see very beautiful. And again, just a couple of levels above what your standard and what you're going to see. And for the price point, of course, that's what you would expect. Same goes for these hands. My gosh, look at the bevels on these hands. Just outstanding here, guys. The dial is this Sunray blue-gray dial. It does have the date at 3 o'clock with a framed window there, and then it does have that silver brushed disc for the date itself. So very cool. And in terms of the contrast, still high enough contrast, but then I think it's a bit of class that they step it up by having that silver date wheel. Now getting into, of course, the lume itself, you're going to see Seiko Lume Bright, and it is bright because one, it's, you know, a modern Lume Bright application and formula, as well as the fact that, yeah, they went the extra mile and really applied it quite thick. So I'm looking forward to showing that to you guys. This does have 300 meters of water resistance, or 1,000 feet, and this is ISO compliant for saturation diving. So very, very cool. So you can see, I believe on the back, it does say, yep, divers watch 300 meters, saturation diving. And that is not something that any watch can just put on it. It has to, basically, for it to bear that verbiage, you know, it does have to meet those ISO requirements. So very cool. The lugs are 19 millimeters and drilled. The original didn't have drilled lugs, but it did have 19 millimeter lugs. So again, that's another thing that's true to the old style. It does originally come with a silicone two-piece waffle style with a metal keeper and a milled pin buckle, which is very nice. But here you're going to see it on something that's just a little bit more versatile, a little bit more refined in terms of daily wear on this Artem straps. Really beautiful. you know, two-piece loopless sailcloth style with the Omega style buckle deployant there. So very, very nice. So with all that said, let's actually get this piece on wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, it still wears pretty well. And of course, if I get it closer to the camera, there's gonna be a bit of lens distortion. It's gonna appear much larger than it actually is. So I'll keep my wrist nice and low here and just give it a couple of turns for you so you guys can see. But you know, let's also just tighten up the frame here and you guys can get a nice, you know, detailed look while still getting a nice true aspect ratio of how this actually wears. So again, I don't want to convince anybody that this thing wears small. It doesn't. It is a big honking dive watch, and that's one of the charming things about it. It's being what it's meant to be. Same draw as you know, a Rolex Deep Sea. It's not just a fancier you know, Submariner. It's something else, right? That level of depth and technology here. In this case, even the use of a high beat caliber. It just it's very cool. And of course, this doesn't just, they didn't just put a high beat caliber in here. It's significant to Seiko's heritage in terms of, you know, this model, the original model that inspired this piece actually was their first high beat diver and their first saturation diver. So very, very cool. And I just love it. And of course, it's a great pairing with my SLA017 that is a lot more manageable in terms of size and more versatile. This can be more of a dedicated piece. You guys know that, you know, from my collecting, I came to a realization, I'd say probably towards the end of last year, that I really wanted to make a go at creating and curating a core collection, because really my collection of watches had just been me having a lot of watches because I have a YouTube channel and I review a bunch of watches, and I'm not a big flipper, so I just have a ton of watches. And I love watching people's state of collections, because then they have these watches and they have a size and a collection, and each piece means something, represents something, fills a space for something. So I recently started doing that. So just keep an eye out. Eventually I'll post a state of the core collection is what we'll call it. Yes, I'll still have other watches, you know, that I have on hand, but in terms of, hey, what's my collection? What is the one that I feel like represents me within my journey as an individual, and not just is my closet full of watches because I'm a watch YouTuber? That is going to be something that I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys in a really special way here in the future. So you guys can see, again, I don't recommend this as a one watch, but hey, if you're into it and you like larger watches and you have the wrist to pull it off, you might really enjoy this piece. I mean, I know that I have been. Look at that seconds hand. It's just so unique. And then of course, you know, I already kind of got to field test the fact that I will wear and do enjoy this combination, because I have that SPB variation of it, that Marine Master Reduced. So to have this as kind of like a crowning jewel version of it, or that I can really put on with a you know, huge smile and sense of pride, it just makes it that much more fun. So with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Yes, as you can see, this thing is an absolute monster. Look at the lume. I mean, it is so bright that you can see even the outer edges of that dual curved sapphire just kind of absorb and radiate and reflect that back out, just because it's that noticeable and it's that nice. But one thing I always like to work in, of course, is a bit of low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or maybe just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to maybe even include some harsh lighting, which typically could expose some level of production defects. But you're going to see here, wow, just gorgeous. And this movement, I forgot to mention, is using their micro technology, MEMS technology, to where, I mean, they're carving little oiling, lubricating reservoirs within the pieces. So I mean, this is just, in terms of tech, this is a next level movement. I know when we think of high beat, a lot of times we just think of Zenith, but you got to also remember that Seiko has been a player within this space. And you're seeing, especially within Grand Seiko, they continue to elevate and evolve. But man, it is nice to see just a standard branded Seiko watch with such a glorious movement and such a fantastic case. It's really a love letter to the Seiko fans. We know that this isn't mainstream. There aren't a lot of people that are going to want to pay this much. Really, they only made 1,100 of them. They're not even sold out yet. You can still buy these brand new, unworn. But if you want to save some money, definitely buy them in the aftermarket. One of the nice things about that is if you buy it pre-owned, you know, a lot of times there's folks that it might just not be you know, their wrist size, or maybe they just want to wear it on a bracelet and they don't find the right strap. So you can typically, you know, and if they have a good relationship with the AD, they already got a little bit of a discount, then they're going to give you a discount, and you can get it, you know, something like this. Look at the condition that it's in. It's just immaculate, really. So, whew, this thing's gorgeous, guys, and I just love how it looks. This Lume is just out of control. It's still, look at it, it's just still burning bright, and it's going to keep doing that just because it is what you think it is. It is a Seiko diver, and it may be the most Seiko diver when you think about the design cues that were started by the original 6159, having the crown offset at 4 o'clock, having the dual indice at 12, having those particular cuts and undercuts, you know, that even speak today, you know, within Grand Seiko's, you know, grammar of design in terms of some of the flat plane brushing. So there's just so many beautiful things about this piece. And no, it's not for everybody. It's not the Marine Master Reduced, which is a great watch for everyone. But this is a watch for those of you that really, again, for a curated collection, for a special collection, for a special timepiece, and a special owner, you can really get a lot of joy out of this piece. So closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist, it actually wears surprisingly well. It's still large, even on my larger wrist, but it really utilizes all of those case contouring tricks you can still find on the modern Marine Master 300 models, which are also monoblock cases. In terms of model variants, it's also available in a more true to the original colorway with that black and gilt style, which has already been long sold out, which is the SLA025 or SBEX011. And that one was definitely on the list too, but because I recently reviewed that same model also, you know, there's something about a blue dial diver in terms of, hey, you have to have it in your collection, even when you have a watch as versatile as the SLA017 with that gray dial. For me, it just felt like the perfect pairing. But yeah, there are some other options that are out there if you're not into blue. And the good news is if you get it in the black, you can even throw it on a black sailcloth style strap as well. I mean, it's not perfect like OEM, but man, I think it looks good. And, you know, as the light shifts and everything shifts, you're going to find different times. And for me, it doesn't have to be perfectly matchy and versatile. That's what I have my SLA017 for. This is definitely something that's going to pop, that's going to be fun, vibrant, and just you know, that extra punch. And at the same time, it's, you know, color wise, it's nothing crazy, but it still is going to punch. It's going to and really jump off the wrist in a lot of ways, right? Whether it be the ever brilliant steel or just the you know, exorbitant color there that is just exuding this maritime theme. So in terms of comparable models, high beat dive watches aren't exactly abundant, guys. Then you kind of add the historical significance, and Seiko is really just kind of competing with themselves within this space. If you have smaller wrists and you might prefer the 62 MAS based SLA037, which was part of this 55th anniversary as well. It's, so you might like that. For me, I think it was better to just kind of have those separated and a little bit more pure in terms of the places that they hold within the collection. Or Longines recently did release, or I should say re-release, their Ultrachron diver, which retails for about $3,600 with a 43 millimeter case, but it is thinner at 13.6 millimeters, and it does have a slightly lower power reserve at 52 hours. And while historical, it's not exactly influential considering its design language really never exceeded its own line. While Seiko spawned the Marine Master 300 and eventually the Marine Master 200 and Marine Master 200 reduced lines, directly based off of this. And there was, of course, a lot of ones that just took a lot of different cues and elements that became key to kind of Seiko's diver design language. So this is definitely a little bit more iconic, although I shouldn't say a little, it's a lot more iconic. While that Ultrachron diver, it's going to have a regulated movement, so really great from the accuracy promise standpoint. This is going to promise you high accuracy. It's going to deliver it 9 times out of 10. But it's again, it's not promised like the Ultrachron would be, but I will say that you can find this used cheaper than an Ultrachron, and of course this, again, in terms of historical significance, in terms of the materials and things like that, it's a bit ahead. And even in the power reserve, which just goes to show you guys, the super brand that the Swatch Group is, they were creating a high beat diver in modern times, and it still isn't outmatching this movement in terms, at least in terms of the longevity, right, of the power reserve. So I think that's pretty telling that Seiko has been, at this for quite some time without a lot of stoppages. So for me, guys, bottom line, when you combine the iconic looks and the historical significance with its premium, ever brilliant steel construction, this piece really exists in a league of its own. But I know that this has been such a long review, guys. I apologize, but you know what? If you stuck with me, let me know what you all think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.